and welcome to another exciting episode of the Digital Download, the longest running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now officially syndicated through IGBN and the TuneIn Radio Network. We are the largest reach of any online podcast as well, I believe. Before we got a fantastic guest with us today, but before we introduce the guest, let's just go round the horn and introduce ourselves. Richard.
Good afternoon, Richard Jones from Curate, a partner of DLA Ignite. Really pleased to be here. I'm a relative newbie to social selling. I think last week I described myself as unconsciously incompetent before I joined the gang. So I'll repeat that joke because I know Tim enjoyed it last time, but I'm now feeling a lot more consciously incompetent. I kind of know what I don't know I'm doing right.
Fantastic. Tim.
Yes, my name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite and famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers.
And I'm Adam Gray. I'm Tim's business partner, also co-founder of DLA Ignite, and not really famous for anything, but I'm working on it. So today we're joined by an old friend of ours, Scott Russell, and in the run-up to the show, I was thinking about a really cool quote to introduce him, and Oscar Wilde wrote the play The Importance of Being Earnest. And to paraphrase that, the famous quote where he says, "To lose one may be regarded as misfortune, to lose two looks like carelessness." So to have one successful business growth and exit may be regarded as lucky. To have five would very much be decided that you would be an entrepreneur. So with that in mind, let me introduce our dear friend, Scott Russell.
Hi, guys. Yeah, good. So what a lovely intro, Adam.
Well, you know, it only took me 4 months to prepare that. So, but it's amazing. You know, the word entrepreneur is bandied around so much in the marketplace. And anybody who has been made redundant and starts their own business likes to go under the moniker of entrepreneur. But you truly are an entrepreneur. And in your kind of found, grow, exit, you've learned a lot about business and a lot about what makes a business successful. And in your last business, you had the strapline, the coffee company. You had the strapline "Fueling Ambition," and you came on here and you spoke about how in that business you were putting something back and the importance of fair trade and doing the right thing, not because it lines your pockets, although it is good business to be a good business, but the fact that it sort of fueled your passion and made you thrilled to be part of something that was doing a bit of good in the world. So I guess as a kickoff, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you got to here, where you are today, and some of the kind of anecdotes and things that you've learned along the way.
Oh wow, what a great intro again. Yeah, so I'm learning French, and my French teacher said to me, the word entrepreneur, it's a noun, it's a doing word. It means emprendre, it means to follow on. So I suppose a true entrepreneur is someone that can just follow on and do it again. So I'm going to take you all the way back to 1994. I was a young guy and I sold my first company when I was 24. And I didn't want to sell it. I loved the business. I was one of 5 guys and we were building a national plumbing business. Now, I'm not a plumber, but I'm really good at knocking on doors and I'm really good at getting people to sign up when I was in front of them. So my product just happened to be plumbing services, and I was a group of guys and we built this business up, and then we sold it to GE Capital. Now, at the time, GE Capital was one of the biggest companies in the world by market capitalization, and they bought this little business for 5.7 million quid. And I remember being 24 with £1 million. And I was like, what do I do with £1 million? So obviously I bought a house and I bought a car, a Porsche 911 car. And then I realized I didn't take any tax advice. So I was hit with a huge, big tax bill. And at the time it was taper relief, and I didn't own the shares long enough to qualify for taper relief. So I was sort of reluctantly forced into rolling this money into another company. And then when I built that business up, that showed me that you can build companies and then sell them and actually make some really good money. And I've gone on to do that another 4 more times. So I'm a reluctant or a entrepreneur, but I've learned a lot over the years, and I'm now 54.
No, surely not.
What a youngster.
Thank you. And I've just sold my last business, and now I coach people how to do the same thing.
So Scott, when you came on the conversation to the digital download last, something that really, really stuck with me, which was that. So for those that don't know, the company that you've just sold is a coffee company, and what you said is that the reason why you started a coffee company was because you actually had sold another company, and you had quite a harsh competitive contract, so you couldn't start a competitor to what you just sold. And you're sitting there having a cup of coffee, thinking, "I wonder what I could do next." And then you're drinking this coffee and thinking, I could start a coffee company. So is it so when you've got your ideas for doing things, is it the fact that it just comes to you in a flash, or is it that fact that you've been thinking about it for 4 months, or what is it? How do you come up with ideas?
So a lot of people ask me that. It's a great question, actually, because what do you know about coffee? And I knew nothing about coffee. Actually, I wasn't even a great fan of coffee, if I'm honest with you. I didn't mind a double espresso in the morning if I was going for a run, but wasn't really a great fan. But what I realised, this was way back in 2007, is that there was a niche there. There was an opportunity for a cool hand-roasted coffee brand. Our Antipodean cousins were doing it really well in New Zealand and Australia, and it was this fledgling industry that was sprouting up, and people were paying for $3 for a coffee in Melbourne, and that was just, wow, mind-blowing. So if they're doing it there, surely it's going to work over here. And the concept of building a great business is the same whether you're selling plumbing services, telephony, healthcare, whether you're selling, coffee. It honestly doesn't matter. It's about building a brand that people want to buy. And there's a difference between a brand that sells and a brand that wants to. If you can create a product where people want to buy it, you don't have to sell it. So, some brilliant brands out there. We could say Apple, we could say Ferrari. These are brands that you don't wake up one morning and someone sells you a Ferrari. You want to buy it. You want it. And that's the magic elixir. Create something that people want to buy, and the rest will start to fall into place. So yeah, it's no attachment to coffee. It just seemed quite a good thing at the time.
Scott, quick question from me. How do you think that this translates into a sort of a B2B world? I can see in the sort of consumer world, you can create a brand that people want to buy. But in the B2B world, I think it's possibly a little bit more challenging. So I'd be interested in your take on that, and how you think maybe you could aspire to the same model.
Yeah, I'd flip that back to you, actually, and say I think it's easier in a B2B. And all of my book companies have been B2B companies, even the coffee company.
Okay.
It off as a B2B. So we were working with some huge businesses, and the concept is that let's supply to big businesses, and let's gear the business ready for that. And before that, we were dealing with the NHS, and before that it was telephony. So I understand the B2B market probably a lot better than the B2C market. But once you're doing it pretty well with you understanding it, then the transition to a B2C isn't too difficult. So yeah, I'll flip that back and say it's probably easier B2B.
Oh, excellent, good.
So obviously along the way you've created some very loyal, high-performing teams, because even as an entrepreneur, it's not all you, is it? You surround yourself with good people that do a lot of the lifting, and you funnel their ideas. So how do you create the culture within a business that invites people like that to come in and contribute, rather than people just to see it as a job?
And the best thing to do is talk to young adults, go to a school and ask these sort of brilliant questions, because if you follow the normal path of an entrepreneur, we create a company because we love the product or the service that we're doing. We get good at it and we start to grow, and we get busier than one person can deal with. So then we bring on board an assistant, and that assistant helps you grow, and then you build maybe an ops team, and then you create this classic pyramid. And that's how the business starts to grow. My concept is completely the opposite. So I'll create the company, I'll create the concept, and I think I know what the value is going to be in the future. And the first thing I'll do when I launch that business, I'll try to replace myself. The very first person I try to replace in that business or hire is someone to take my role. And then once I've done that, then I'll look at the next challenge, which could be logistics, could be marketing. And I'll look to bring on board a brilliant person there. And when I say brilliant people, I can find these brilliant people because they just don't have that courage to do it for themselves. They've got all the skill sets, they've got all the products, they're brilliant at what they do, but they're not a founder, and they just haven't got that leap of faith to do it. And it's brilliant to take on people like that, because you can take that energy, you can take that passion, and you can really help them become a company owner. So reverse the pyramid, get yourself out of the business, and then start to bring on people that perhaps haven't got that opportunity or that know-how, and then you can teach them. And you hear a lot, hire people that are better than yourself, but that's not too difficult with me, actually. I'm not actually that good at anything. And one of the nicest things people can say to me, and they've said to me over the years, you don't actually do something. You're really lucky, aren't you, Scott? You've had 5 companies. You don't ever seem to do anything. You don't ever seem to be anywhere. You never sit in a meeting anywhere. But yet you built these 5 companies. You know, you're an incredibly lucky guy. I'll leave that with you.
Yeah, well, it isn't luck, is it? It's about you're incredibly generous with your praise of people, and you demonstrated it here. I spoke for 30 seconds to introduce you, and oh, what a lovely intro, thank you. That was a really, and it's that you have a gift for making people feel good about themselves and giving them a safe space to be able to do their thing, I guess. Having known you and some of the people that you've worked with, they feel very empowered by you. So what can founders and business owners do to help create that environment where people feel that they can really bring the best of themselves? Because we hear time and again so many organizations are people focused, and they're not people focused.
We're a family.
Yeah, exactly. These are just phrases that are rolled out, aren't they? They don't mean anything 9/10 of the time. So how do you make it different? Because your recipe has worked, and every business that you've started has been in a completely different industry. So the business bit is the transferable skill. The industry knowledge is complete. There's no overlap between any of these. So how have you managed this?
Yeah, it's a good point. And I remember my grandfather. When we was growing up, my parents worked long hours, and I would stay with my grandparents. And my grandfather was a proper old gent, post-war gent. And he was a guy that used to clean his shoes every day and have a press shirt, even into his 80s and 90s. And he always said to me, Scott, whenever you meet somebody, find something genuinely positive about meeting somebody and praise them. I love your suit. Doesn't your hair look great today? It's really, and he said, but you've got to mean it. You can't just say it, because people will see through that. And every time I meet somebody, I'll try to find something positive. And you can apply that approach to people that you employ, the products that you're servicing, the teams that you're bringing on board. And I'm a great believer in, I'm quite happy. I don't need to sit on a pile of cash or a pile of shares. I'm quite happy within an afternoon to give away 60% of a company if I can get the right people on board during that session to take that to the next level. And people say, oh, I'll never give away equity. Equity's precious. No, it's not. It's not precious. People are precious. The products, the services, the delivery, the interaction. And if you can't afford to pay for those people, then get them on board, offer them, share options in the business, get them on board. And that concept works across a whole plethora of companies, because you've got someone there who's not an employee now. They walk out and say, I'm a company owner. I've got shares. And this goes against everything they teach you in business school.
Yeah. So you've got a vision for your businesses. You start the business and you have a dream of where that can go. So what do you do to instill that dream in the others that join the business or work with you?
Well, and it's not a dream, actually. It's actually a mathematical calculation, and I pretty much know where that business is going to go, and that's just through 30 odd years of building companies. And a few years back, my third company, I already had an option to sell that business when we got to a certain level. So there was a promissory contract signed. There was a future of the business. We had to prove our track record and we had to hit certain KPIs. But if we achieved that, there was a contract in place to buy our business at a multiple that we agreed at the beginning. So that is not an unusual concept for me. And then if I create a company, I'm already looking for the exit before I even now, and I call that reverse engineering, and I coach that and I teach that, and it's a strange mindset, actually, because you're looking for that exit before you've even built it. But if you genuinely don't know where you're going, then it's very difficult to fall off.
So how do you get the other people in the organization to buy into this? Because everybody, when they start a business, they think they're going to be the next Mark Zuckerberg or Steve Jobs, and most businesses don't go that way. So you have to surely get that vision into the heads of the people around you as well.
Yeah, but you do, and it gets much easier. And bearing in mind that I'm now on my sixth company, and they're all much bigger companies now that I'm not running them. What that says about me, I don't know. But these are two of them are public companies now, and these are big businesses now. So I'm pretty confident in my own ability to create a nucleus, a small business, turn it into a valuable business that can be picked up by a bigger company, and let those guys run with it. And proof in the pudding is in the eating, isn't it? We can all talk about it, but once you've done it 5 times, the 6th time becomes even easier, and the 7th time becomes easier. So if you've got a track record to lean on, I think that helps, Andy. But in your answer, how does one without that experience do it? That's a different question altogether. You've got to then prove it. You've got to roll up your sleeves. You've got to, sit in the trenches and fight with them, certainly in the early days, to prove, talk is cheap, isn't it?
Yes. So how do you start to see which people are stepping up and which people aren't? Because even someone with your track record doesn't have 100% success rate of getting the right people on board. So how do you identify which people are the ones that are in step with you heading towards this objective?
That's again, that's quite it's a bit like playing a game of football. You know the players that well, the players that get substituted. You set a goal at the beginning of that game. You have a strategy and you follow that strategy. You don't need to be a genius to work out people that aren't getting it, aren't working with you. And it may not even just be monetary value. It could be cultural fit. It could be people that perhaps don't want to go out for a beer on a Friday night, or for those that don't want to do the yoga class on a Monday morning when the team all get together. There are little KPIs, there are things, there are warning signs. But ultimately, that's down to the line manager to do that. If a line manager comes to me and says, look, Scott, we've just wasted 40 grand on somebody, I would probably say, well, that's not wasted 40 grand. That's cost us £40,000 to work out what doesn't work. So know next time what doesn't work. So I think that's quite a good investment, actually, because I'm not going to waste that 40 grand again. So I don't think that's a very expansive question, and difficult to answer in hindsight, I suppose.
So one of the things that you talked about last time you were on, Scott, was that because you were in the middle of running this coffee company, and one of the things was about, and I don't know whether it's you questioning things or whether, but you said that you were sitting down one day and you went and you looked at where the coffee was coming from, and you actually realised that that the where people were basically saying it was coming and it was natural, and the money was going back to all of the coffee growers and stuff like that. When you actually investigated it, actually very little was going back to the coffee growers.
Yeah.
So you actually brought, if I remember, was it a farm? And to actually grow your own coffee, because you found that you could actually put more back into the local people that were actually making the coffee than by going down this other route.
Hey, look, I'm a great believer in knowing your supplier's supplier. And you're absolutely right, my friend. I was in a restaurant in New York and they were selling a cup of coffee. I don't think it was my coffee, but it was certainly a cup of coffee.
And you looked at fair trade.
Yeah, it was like $9. I'm thinking, Christ, $9 someone's taking for a cup of coffee. And I then wanted to work out, well, of that $9, how much goes back to the farmer? So it wasn't very difficult to research this, and this wasn't too long ago. Actually, it was back in 2014, 2015. So it wasn't that far ago. And then we realised that less than 2 cents actually went back to the farmer, and the rest was caught up in this very convoluted supply chain. And it doesn't take genius to work out, actually, we probably could do this better ourselves. And there was this whole podcast about how I challenged fair trade and the Rainforest Alliance, and that was really good fun. And I quite enjoyed the battle with them. But we said we could do it better. And then, and the idea of sharing the retail value with the farmer. And what the biggest revelation was, big firms like Green King, Marriott, big global firms said, yeah, okay, we're cool with that. Yeah, we'll share the retail value. No problems at all. And all the way along, we're being fed this bullshit about, you can't push the prices along. They're never going to pay them. Well, they will do. Because when they realised the money that they were being paid was substantially less than what they thought, they wanted to do something about it. Big businesses actually are genuinely, they do have an ESG focus. They do care about corporate social responsibility. I don't think these big companies don't. They do. They're just a bit clunky sometimes. But genuinely, there's a board of directors. There's a way of doing things. And you don't get to become a big global brand if you don't give a shit about the planet. So, just chat as we're doing now around a table, and you'd be surprised what can come of that.
So tell us what you did.
Well, I've got to be a little bit careful because I'm still
Okay.
the covenant what I can say, because
Okay, no worries.
they're owned by an investment firm, and I got told off a few months back because I was on stage and they used the Paddy and Scott's logo, and I got a message back from their legal team to say don't do that, even though it did say exit. So, but in answer to your question, we just said, okay, let's have a look at our suppliers. Let's go to around the world. Let's see if we can do it better. And in isolation, it's easy to do it. On a global scale, it's slightly better, like bigger and harder. But the concept was, I can do it better than fair trade. And we proved that we did. And the International Trade Centre, which I think is a quango with UNICEF and Save the Children, did a white paper report on the project. And it was a glowing report. And that to me was a really proud moment when you get international recognition for the supply chain that you set up. And that was these guys were following us for months to find out what we were doing right and what we could do better. And it was a great place to be when that report was issued.
So clearly you've had some phenomenal successes during your career, starting a business with nothing and exiting with loads, and repeating this and things like the fair trade, or improving the world of fair trade and getting the kind of the rubber stamp and the ratification of that. But sometimes things don't go well. Sometimes things go dreadfully badly and don't pan out as you planned, either in a business or with a client or a project, or with some concept that you have that you can't take to market and you've completely misunderstood what's going on. So how do you bounce back from that? Because I've never seen you not smile. I've never seen you take any of this stuff. You're always upbeat. If something's going well, you're smiling. If something's not going so well, you're still smiling and have got that kind of energy around you. So how do you do that? How do you do that? Because that's something everybody would like to know, I'm sure.
Look, I'm a blessed guy. You know, I've got my health, I've got my family, I've got 4 great boys. I've got a son that's 26 that's rocking it in the digital media world. Just bought his first house in London. He's filming in Cambodia. Then he's off to Los Angeles. I've got another lad that's about to leave to go to Canada to teach girls how to play rugby. I mean, you know, I'm a blessed guy. I'm in a beautiful home. I have a home in Southwest France. I have a home in Portugal. I have a home in the UK. I get to travel when I want to, and I get to coach brilliant entrepreneurs. You know, why wouldn't I be smiling every day? Why wouldn't I? And you know,
that's like celebrate, like you said, about you meet someone and you find something really nice about them that you can compliment.
Yeah.
How do you frame this? Because I think that I saw a really great. Now, I'm not a big fan of Stephen Bartlett, but I saw one of his Diary of a CEO podcasts when he was interviewing Jimmy Carr, and Jimmy Carr said, "We suffer from life dysmorphia at the moment. You know, we have got it better than we have ever had it." He said, every time you get in a hot shower, remember that 50 years ago, nobody had a hot shower. So that simple pleasure is something you should be celebrating. You've no idea how lucky you are. And yet, objectively, we are that. But subjectively, we look around and go, oh, God, I wish I had a new car. I wish I had a new pair of training shoes. Wish I could go on holiday. These people seem to be living this wonderful lifestyle. So how do you reframe this stuff when things are not going well? How do you do what you just did and say, yeah, that's gone to crap, but this other stuff is what defines me, and this is what's really important? How do you keep perspective on this?
Again, you're probably asking the wrong person, because I tend to see the world in rose-coloured glasses. So, you know, if a doctor said to me, okay, Mr. Russell, you've got 24 hours to live, I go, right, okay, let's get on my motorbike, let's go and do a parachute, let's go and make the last 24 hours really count. I wouldn't sit there and mope and think, you know, Christ, what am I going to do? And I think, you know, when you're around someone that's genuine, honestly positive, then that brings out the positivity in other people as well. So, you know, I used to love sitting in our management meetings on a Monday morning, because I would feed off that positivity, and that positivity would go back in spades to the team. And, you know, empowering people that have never been empowered before, asking one of our baristas to come into a board meeting, a strategy meeting, and say, okay, come on, how are you going to run this? How would you run this company better? How would you do it? Come on, sit down. You've got the floor for 10 minutes. And they're never going to get that opportunity again until they run their own company. You know, the brilliant Maddie Gray, your daughter, you know, at the time that she worked with us, and she worked with an intern, and they designed the first Keep cup made from, you know, recycled Bic pen lids. There's over 1 million of those out there that your daughter's created, that she's done that now. You know,
she's got her initials in the product code.
I know.
Yeah.
The QR code, it's got her initials on there. And you know, but would you give that project to an intern and you know, a school, you know, someone with a school experience? Absolutely, of course we would do. You know, and that empowers people. And, you know, there is something to, you know, about this. Now, you can't just be positive for the sake of being positive, because that looks a bit sinister. That looks a bit strange. So, but you know, it's as human beings, you're right. You know, we've got things really, really well. And, you know, if you were setting up a company tomorrow, there is so much help out there for you. You know, there's an opportunity called the internet, social selling, where, you know, everybody now can be your customer. And this is something I never had when I was a young lad growing up. So, yeah, I think it's a good time to be alive, isn't it?
It is. I mean, I remember the first business that I ever set up 25, maybe more years ago. And I didn't know anything about it. I didn't know anyone like you. I didn't know an entrepreneur. Didn't know anyone, because there was no internet. You know, you had your immediate network of people that you knew, but I didn't know anyone that kind of could give me a leg up or point me in the right direction. So I went to the Citizens Advice Bureau and said, I'm looking to start a business. What do I need? And they said, well, you should go to Business Link, because they've got some help they can give you. So I went to Business Link and I said, I'm starting my first business. What do I need to do? And they said, well, you need an accountant. I said, well, show me an accountant. Here's a list of accountants. So just pick one of these because we can't give you any advice. So, well, I've come here for advice. I've not come here for a shopping list. I've come here for advice. I want you to tell me what I need to do so I can go and do it. And now I get it that it's a great deal easier from that perspective. But also it's a lot more difficult because now there are loads of people like me that are starting their first business that now have got all of this help, and it's a lot easier to launch a business today. So there's more competition, and that's a bad thing, isn't it?
I think you set your bar. That's the thing, is that there's more competition, but people want to be a millionaire within 6 weeks, and this just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. It doesn't take 6 years, 10 years to become a millionaire in business. So you just got to set your sights realistically. And when you set your sights realistically and you do the basics well, you've got a better chance of the other person setting up that business on the day. And it's just as simple as that. It's doing 5 things every day really well. And this morning I was up at 5:30, and I'm not a gym guy, but I do like going for a run in the morning. I had a mentoring session between 10 and 12. I picked my son up from school. I've got a conference call here. I'm on a podcast with you guys. I'm doing a keynote speech this evening. Every day I'm really super busy. So I don't really get time to sort of, wonder or ponder. And when you explain that to young entrepreneurs that are setting up a business, I don't think they realize how hard you've got to work. You've got to work really hard. But if you're really enjoying that work, actually, it's not like work. And this is the thing. So it's trying to sort of, get people to take on board these tasks because they enjoy doing it. And then success may well follow you and you're not pushing it. So enjoy what you're doing, initially, I think it's a really key thing. It's an obvious thing, but I think we miss the obvious things in business sometimes, don't we?
Absolutely. And I think so I saw a post on Instagram or whatever it was the other day, and it was highlighting how much money, and again, this is obviously, you're in business to make money. You want to make money. You're prepared to work for that. You don't expect a free ride. But everywhere young people look, what they do see is people getting a free ride. Now, I'm not saying that being an influencer isn't hard work and these people don't deserve. Kim Kardashian didn't get to have 150 million followers by accident. But Mr. Beast making 450 million pounds a year on YouTube, and and he's been doing it for 5 years or whatever. And then by contrast, you've got this person that spent their whole life that's got half as much. And it seems that everywhere we look, that we are having our noses rubbed in the fact that there's an easy button. It's easy for you. Just follow my plan and you're going to be a multimillionaire by this time next week. And, you get to be old and cynical like us and you realize actually that generally isn't the way the world works. But I'm not sure that young people see that side of it. They don't see that you work, as Arnold Schwarzenegger said in his autobiography, the reason I'm going to win is because I'm going to work harder than you. Not because I'm a better actor or stronger or fitter or more handsome or anything. It's because I'm just going to outwork you. And that work ethic is something which is so often not talked about, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think, do you know what, guys? I think the sort of younger generation get a bad rap as well, actually. I think I meet some really hardworking young entrepreneurs. I meet some really hardworking baristas and people doing sort of, on agricultural apprenticeships. And these guys are working, these girls are working really hard. And, let's not, so we all like to talk about a woke society and this and that. And I think that's a very small majority, really. So, I think that, they get a bad rap. But it's no different from 100 years ago when my parents, my grandparents, my great-grandfathers, they went through difficult times the way they were doing it now, but they were just slightly different landscape, that's all. The human being will always will always face challenges. And what makes us a great race is that we'll all overcome that. And, it's, so it's getting very philosophical. But I think it's important to talk about it, isn't it?
Yeah, I think so, because like it or not, you're a role model for lots of people, young and old. You're a picture of success, not just in terms of the fact that you've grown successful businesses, but the fact that you've got a life that makes you smile. Like you said, you're up to, you jump on your bike and you flash home in order to get here in time to do the podcast, and then you're going to be off speaking somewhere, and then you're doing all of these different things, and And I think often the fact that that's hard work, albeit work that you love, that's hard work is maybe not seen by many people.
Yeah. Look, I think people do see it and they do realise it. Maybe they don't want to see it, and that may be the problem.
Yeah.
But fundamentally, I don't think people are stupid. I think they realise that you've got to work hard. And there's always going to be exceptions to the rule. You're always going to have Mr. Beast or Kim Kardashian or what have you. Of course you are. You've had that forever. So look, it's I coach entrepreneurs, and it's the best job in the world. I coach 12 entrepreneurs per month. It's one-on-one. I don't do any virtual. I'm no good with tech. I've got a tiny little screen. I'm using my phone. I don't even know how to use a computer. I've never used a mouse. I've honestly never used a mouse thing. And I was on I host a radio show for a business that I own. And what scares me to death is all the technology, all the buttons and the flashing bits and so forth. And when they said to me, right click, I said, well, what's right click? What does that mean? Right click. What that means, right click. I can use a phone. I'm pretty good at that. And I can, but yeah, so do what you're good at, and if you're not good at, pay someone else to do it for you. That's my lesson in life. Find out what you, and if what you're good at is getting people on board to run your business, and that's what you're good at, trade on that. Don't push, what do they say? Don't push water up a hill, does it? Otherwise you're not going to be able to do it. So yeah, just be honest with yourself, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So 5 businesses grown and sold, coaching entrepreneurs, which is a much more intimate thing, isn't it? It's about putting something back. What next? You're a man in the prime of his life. So what are you going to devote your efforts and mental thoughts to from now on?
There's a great film. There's a great book actually, and it's a film by Peter Mao, and it's called A Good Life. And it's about this guy, this broker in the city that loses his job and inherits a farmhouse in France, southwest France, and he starts to grow wine. And I've watched this movie so many times. It's a movie that when I watch it, I absolutely love the characters in the movie. I love the movie template. I love the ambience of it, the picture. It's just lovely. So I thought to myself, that's what I want to do. I want to buy a farmhouse in France with a vineyard, and I'm going to make wine, and I'm going to really enjoy this because, I've done the same sort of thing in coffee. There's no reason why I can't do that. So most people will sit there over a beer and go, I'm going to do that. And then they're going to say, yeah, and that'll be a great idea. And then it doesn't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. But what I did, I jumped on a plane. I spoke to the agent immobilier, and I said, right, I want to buy a vineyard, I want to buy a farm, I want to buy a house, I want to buy a chateau, I want all that sort of thing. And it's not that expensive, actually. It's
good value, yeah.
There is a reason why they're not very cheap. I can tell you that, but that's a completely different story. So I thought, right, okay, this is the area I want to be. I want to put a brisket in the oven in the morning. I want to go skiing in the Pyrenees, and in the afternoon I want to finish off on the beach in Biarritz. I want to get on my surfboard, and I want to come back, crack open a bottle of wine that's been grown in my vineyard, and open and eat my brisket that's been in the oven from this morning. So I thought that's a really good idea. I thought give that a go. So that's what I've done. And I've got no idea whether I'm ever going to make this business a success, and I really don't care. But what I am going to do is I'm going to enjoy things like that. And, and I guarantee you, I joke now, I will turn it into a successful business like I've done before. But, people, you've got one life, yeah? We've got one life, guys. And we talk about our dreams and so forth. But yet, so many of us never have those fulfilled dreams, and they go to, they're great, God bless them, with money in the bank. I don't believe that. I'm going to spend a lot.
Good. I mean, that's fantastic. So we've got a great question here from Mark. Do you find that you have developed at least 5 things you share with all of your clients for boosting business? Give us at least one for free. Yeah,
I do actually. It's a great question as well, because the first thing I do when I sit down with clients, I try to work out where they want to be in 5 years' time. And I want them to visualize that. I want them to picture where they're going to be. And that doesn't mean you've sold your company for squillions. It could be that you're sitting on a beach and your business is running really well without you. It could well be that you've created a product that addresses climate change. It could well be that you've addressed the whole. So it doesn't matter what that is, but let's start with a goal and let's reverse engineer that. And then we work out what's it going to cost to do that? How much are we going to need to earn? What's our market? And then you can start to build a business like Lego. It all falls into place. And then you start to think, okay, so to do that, you need to do certain things regularly every day. And we go back to this 5-item rule, 5 things that you've got to do every day really well. Set a time to it. Once you've achieved that, then take the day off. Bask in the glory of a really good, well done day. Otherwise, you'll sit on your phone, you'll procrastinate, you'll start things, you'll finish, you won't finish. 5 brilliant things per day. And as you start to grow, you realize those 5 things become really achievable tasks, and those 5 things start to have an impact. And those 5 things turn into 25 a month, and we've got it. We understand where we're going. So have a plan, stick to it, and business is quite simple as long as you don't go off sidetrack.
And is that, in your experience, the marker for whether a business is going to work or not? Whether or not they can stay on track and not be diverted, make this plan and then execute the plan. Is that more important than having a dynamic plan that changes as you learn more as you go along?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's not unusual for me to be on a sort of, version 7 of a business plan. That. And there's no point, what do they say? That the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, but expecting different results. Yeah, so we know that. So if it's not working, you've got to change that. But I am a stickler to sticking to a plan. I really am, because sometimes you'll just go off at a tangent, and success can be intoxicating. You one brilliant deal, and you think, do you know what? We're going to change the way we do things, and we're going to go for this vertical market. Sometimes that can be more dangerous than not. So have a plan, stick to it. You don't need as much money as what you think. That's what I have learned in life. I've exited with over £50 million worth of cash over the years, but you don't need as much money as that. And remember, a lot of that money will go back to paying out shareholders, investors, and so forth. But you don't actually need as much money, I don't think, as what people think they need as well.
Yeah, I think certainly as you get older, you find your pleasures in different, less expensive things, perhaps. But I think the idea of the religious keeping to the plan, change the plan if you need to, but keep to the plan is really important, because I guess it then gives you a yardstick to measure whether or not things are working or not, or you're going in the right direction.
Yeah, if you can't measure something, if you can't monitor it, you can't measure it. If you can't measure it, you can't monitor it. So we all know these analogies, and it's like baking a cake. It's like doing anything. It's like maintenance on your car. You have to follow a process. There's no point taking the oil sump off without draining the oil. There's and people are always looking for that fast fix, and that doesn't work. So, but a mindset as well, making sure if you embark on a journey, if it may not be me, but get yourself a business coach. The best advice I can give somebody is get yourself a mentor or a business coach early on in your journey, because it will just stop you getting the scars, because they've already got them. They've already had them. And if there's money, and they're not, a good business coach doesn't have to be expensive. You can have an online coach. You don't have to be face-to-face online, but definitely do that. And there are organizations out there that will fund up. There's leveling up money available to get yourself a good coach. Definitely do that. I've had a coach for 17 years, still have one.
And how do you find a good coach? Because it seems to me like advice is cheap. Everybody's got an opinion on something, and you are somebody whose advice I would take, because you've proven it. And I often joke about, if I've got a business coach, I want them to be rocking up in a Ferrari, not on a bicycle, because actually it demonstrates that they have been able to execute on their own thinking of this, and it's paid them a dividend for doing it. I'm not looking for a life coach, I'm looking for a business coach. So how do I find a good business coach? Where do I go to do that?
Well, it's funny because a lot of successful entrepreneurs are quite philanthropic in their nature. They are, and they want to give back. So just pick up the phone. Pick up the phone. There's an old term for you, isn't it? Reach out to people that you respect, and you'll be surprised at the response that you get back. The amount of people in my career that I've reached out to, which I'd never ever expect someone to do, but they are, and they will reach back to you. And you're right, Adam. Get a coach that you respect as well. I think that's really important. They don't have to have sold businesses for millions, but they need to have proven themselves in the chosen field that you're going into, whether that's creating teams that can deliver the products or product manager. You just get someone that you respect, and you've got to sit in a room with that person for 3 hours. Do you want to sit in a room for 3 hours with somebody? Is that something that's going to drive you mad? Would that be a chore? Or do you want to look at your watch and go, Christ almighty, we've been in this room for 3 hours. It's gone like that. Mm. They're the sort of people that you want to align yourself with. But reach out to people, because you'd be really surprised who'll come back to you.
So in all of your career and successes and failures and things that have happened, what are the most important learnings that you've had, things that you're reminded of day in, day out, and you like to kind of say to people, you need to be mindful of this, or here's something that I found the hard way?
Yeah, it's a good question. Without sort of, don't take so seriously, all that sort of stuff. But that's a great question. It deserves a good answer, a well thought out answer. And I think that just don't be harsh on yourself. So many people, they give themselves a hard time. They beat themselves up. And, failure, I've had failures. No one ever talks about my failures. But, people always want to talk about the successful companies that you built. They don't want to hear about the failures. But the failures are good as well. There's some great stories where, maybe over a beer one evening I could, if I want to do it on air. But, that age-old question, you learn more from your mistakes. You generally do learn more from your mistakes, and you don't make a mistake. You just learn that it's not the right way of doing it, and that's equally as important as well.
Yeah, good. Yeah, well, I guess that it would be really nice if you could give a little kind of parting thought to people. I think that when I look at you, and we're friends, and we're friends on Facebook, and we're connected on LinkedIn, and I see your travels, and I see what it is that you're doing, and I've known you through some of your businesses, and every time I have an interaction with you, it feels like it's been a worthwhile interaction to have. Whether that's because it's oh, look at that, he's got a new bike, or whether or not that's he's throwing himself into another project, or he's doing another adventure somewhere, or whatever. So what kind of parting thoughts for life and business and everything can you share with people?
I think sort of challenge all the time, positively challenge. And at the moment, I've always wanted to write a book, so I'm going to write a book. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get someone to help me do this, and not that I need someone to help write it, but I need someone to crack the whip and make sure that I'm doing the So I may speak to you guys about that, but literally, I think that you've got to follow that. You've got to follow that dream. You've got to basically believe in yourself and challenge all the time. My commerce teacher was trying to teach me about lost leaders when I was 11 years old at school. It wasn't called business studies then; it was called commerce. And you'd sit there and they would tell you. And and he said to me that you buy something for £1 and you sell it for 90p to get market share. And I was just thinking, I can't get my own. Why would I buy why would I buy something for £1 and sell it for 90p? My mum and dad would go mad. And he went, no, because it's about getting market share and you've got to get people using your products. I said, but that just means that they're using it, but they only want to, they've paid 90p for it. But the product's worth £1.20. Why do I want market share of a product that's being sold below what it should be being sold for? And he just sort of said to me, Scott, get out of the room because you're disruptive. The classroom And I was put outside and I had to sit in front of the headmaster and tell him that I just disagreed with a commerce teacher. And my mum and dad had to come to the school and I was disruptive and so forth. And they were really proud of me. And they went, Scott, you carry on disrupting. So all through my career, if someone tells me I can't do something, I'll listen and then I won't take any notice. I'll just go, right, I'm going to find a workaround. You know, if someone tells me I can't bottle in the area where the vineyard is, I'll say, why can't we bottle there? There's no palliation there. We can't do this. We can't do that. Why not? Well, let's do it. Let's make that work. And I just think that it's, you know, positively, don't be, you know, there's a fine line between disruptive, being, you know, obnoxious, obtuse, whatever words you want to use. But if you genuinely believe something, rules are the fools, right? So write your own rules.
Oh, yes. Yes, I like that. And your commerce teacher, well, he might be dead now, but if he isn't, I hope he's looking at you. Now, I remember, although he's a hideous individual, the guy that Tim, whatever he's called, that started Weatherspoons. Yeah. And apparently one of his teachers at school said, Tim, you'll never amount to anything.
His teacher was called Weatherspoons.
Yeah. And so he named the pub this teacher's name, and he thought, I'm going to build the biggest pub chain in the UK, and I'm going to name it after the teacher that told me I would never amount to anything. So every time he walks down the street in his town, wherever his town is, every time he walks down the street, he'll see this and he'll think of me. Now that's a little bit extreme, but it's quite a cool idea. So I hope that your commerce teacher is looking at you thinking, I should listen to Scott, because I wouldn't be wearing my tweed jacket with the patches on the sleeves.
Do you know what? I hope he, you know, I don't mind. You know, it was just the moral of the story is that the class were just happy to nod along and go, yeah. And I loved commerce, and it wasn't cool to be good at school. I've got no exams at all. I have no. I left school with absolutely nothing. I have an honorary degree now. I have I'm an honorary fellow of the University of Suffolk, and I get to wear these beautiful robes once a year, and I get to stand with all the dignitaries and what have you. And I feel like a real fraud because these guys work really hard, and I stand there and I give out the awards and I shake their hands, and I'm thinking, I hope they never ask me an intelligent question because I just wouldn't know how to answer it. But it just goes to prove, and you know, my 16-year-old son is going through his GCSEs at the moment, and there was so much pressure on the youngsters. I sound like an old guy. There's so much pressure these days, and really, you know, no one's ever asked me what I got in my GCSEs. No one's ever asked me what my degree is. No one's ever done it. So you know, it's not the end of the world if you know, those exam results aren't as good as what you thought they will be, and you know, please don't tell me. And you hear these horror stories of depression and even worse that these youngsters go through now because their exams aren't what they should be. And that's a pretty sad state of affairs. So, you know what, smile, you know, you're brilliant, whatever you want to do. There's a career for you. There's a fact, you know, you're just a brilliant human being. And I think a takeaway is, you know, just be pleased with what you've got, I suppose.
Yeah.
So Scott, so what are you riding at the moment?
A motorcycle.
Yeah. What time?
Actually, where do you want to start? So I'm into electric bikes. I'm really loving an electric bike.
Okay.
And on Sunday, actually, I'm going to ride an electric bike all the way to the south of France. So that's where I'm riding. And my girlfriend and I are riding these bikes. And the most I've ridden so far is 60 kilometers in a day. So I'm not quite sure how long it's going to take, but maybe a couple of weeks. I don't know. If I get bored, I'm going to put it on a thing. But in answer to your question, I have a Royal Enfield 650 GT, which is a stripped down cafe racer, which I absolutely love. It's a cool bike, far cooler than me. And the other one is an R9T, which is a BMW, more of a touring GS. And my love for cars is equally the same as my love for motorcycles as well.
Fantastic. I saw that you've got your Tesla wrapped, and that's an interesting concept. Just because we need to close out. That's an interesting concept because Tesla you having this car that's done 120,000 miles, I think you said, and you decided
116,000 miles now. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
decided to have it wrapped in some new wheels, so it looks all nice and spangly. And think, I wonder if I can do another 120,000 in it. It's unfortunate, isn't it? Because everything that company now stands for is everything that you don't stand for in terms of, as a person. So it's kind of, my how things have changed, eh?
I mean, I've owned that car. I bought that back in 2019, so I've had it for years. And concept was, Andy, is that I wanted to challenge this misconception that you should change a car when it gets to 100,000 miles, and now it's time to get rid of it. And I'm thinking, well, these electric motors can do 1,000,000 miles. They're a motor. There's no wear and tear on it.
Yeah, there's no moving parts.
There's no moving parts at all, Tim. So you think to yourself, well, hold on a minute. What if a Tesla could do 1,000,000 miles? So I thought, but the problem being is that the car isn't that well screwed together, the Tesla. And bits fall off it, and the paintwork's not very good as well. So I just thought, I'm just going to wrap it, and then I'm going to put some new wheels on it, and I've given it a lease of life, and I love it, and I'm over the moon with it, and it's my daily driver, and it's good fun, and I'm not precious about that car, although it's a beautiful car, and I'm very proud to own it. It's just challenging that norm again. We go back to what I said before. I'm going to always challenge the norm as long as I breath in my body. I'm not going to accept the status quo if I think I can do it better.
Fantastic. So, Scott, thank you so much for joining us this week. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you to everybody in the audience, and of course the panel. If you would like to come on as a guest on the digital download, please scan the QR code and fill out. We're always interested in hearing interesting stories from interesting people. So until next week, thank you all very much indeed, and have a great weekend, a great long